And I think if you need to top up your calories, the way I look at it is you look at the protein first, get the right portion of protein, get the right portion of vegetables and leafy greens and all of those other good complex carbs. And then if you still need fuel, bring in the rice or the kumara or whatever your favorite type of starchy carb may be. And that depends on your day. If you're going to sit all day, you probably don't need that extra. But if you are going to be active and you know you've got 3 walking meetings in the city in that day, it's going to be a more active day. So you top up a little bit. So you just up and down depending on what your needs are.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ways to Wealth. Today I am joined by Rich. Rich, why don't you give us the too long didn't read on who you are and how you got here?
Thanks very much. Too long didn't read. So I started life as a retailer.
Yep.
Back in the UK.
Okay.
Moved to New Zealand to work for Woolworths, which it was a different Woolworths back then. It's evolved over the last couple of decades, and got out of retail into the health space because I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Got into health, got into exercise, became a PT,
right,
and realized that the course that I did was going to be more useful than just a bit of information for myself. I realized that I could build a career out of this. So that exercise journey started my health journey, if you like. I started digging for more information, wanted to understand more about how the body works, because one particular method does not work for all bodies in terms of getting results.
Yep.
And that sort of took me down a path of health coaching. So I then became a health coach, registered as a health coach, and realized that there was a whole world of information that was untapped in terms of my knowledge. So I decided to embark on further training, more learning, become better educated at what I did.
Yep.
And realized that it doesn't matter where you start that journey, there's always more to learn, right? It's just an endless process journey, and that's life really. If you become an endless a forever learner, then that's that growth mindset, and I guess it helps you serve your customer, your client better.
Yeah.
So got into health coaching and realized I wanted to have a bigger impact, because that was working fine, but that bigger impact meant trying to find a larger audience. So the larger audience was the corporate space, working with organizations. So work with one organization and impact tens or hundreds of people, rather than work with one person and impact one person at a time.
Yeah.
So that took me down that path, and that's where I'm working now. So operating in that corporate space, working with organizations, helping them improve their bottom line through some of the changes that they can make operationally.
Yep.
And from a culture point of view and the way we do things around here point of view, that filter down to a return on investment for them. So it becomes a money saving exercise in the long term. Based on what's invested compared to what's saved, there's a significant ROI.
Yeah.
And along the way, people become better versions of themselves and didn't realize how good things could be until they tried various different things that I introduced. So through workshops and education, that process evolves across ideally a year, 12 months.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's me in a very small nutshell.
Nice. That's good. Thank you. No, that's really interesting. And when you're talking about that, there's also the trickle-on effects, right? Of the people that your work potentially impacts that you'll never meet because of the people that you're directly in contact with, and how that has that filter effect, right? Through other people.
That ripple effect is strong in what I do, because you impact the person in front of you, and then of course the 5 people they're closest to, their relatives, and so. Yeah, that's a lot of where the reward comes from. You hear, nice stories from people that have been impacted in a positive way, but then they'll come back with another story that, my uncle decided he was going to do such and such, and X, Y, Z occurred, and you think, wow, okay, this is powerful.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So you moved from the UK. Why?
There is a bit of a backstory there, and so yes, I'll go back to the origin. So my father was born in New Zealand.
Okay.
My grandparents moved to New Zealand my grandfather worked for Cadbury, the chocolate company, in Birmingham, in the UK. He was an engineer. He moved to Dunedin to build the factory.
Right.
That was where Cadbury's did all their work. They made all their bars here in New Zealand.
Right.
So he helped build that factory. This is the long version.
No, this is now meant to be the long version.
And the war broke out.
Right.
During that process.
Right.
So he was drafted into the Air Force as an engineer
Okay.
in Nelson.
Okay.
So my uncle was born in Dunedin. My father was born in Nelson.
Right.
So this is going on. They were supposed to be here for a couple of years. They ended up being here for 10 years. So had 2 of their 3 children in New Zealand. So my father, by dint of birth, got a New Zealand passport.
Yep.
That meant that both my brother and myself were eligible for New Zealand passports when we were 18 or whatever age you're allowed to get them. So because I had this passport, when I finished school, I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I had a university place set up, but I wanted to do a gap year.
Right.
And that gap year involved coming to New Zealand. I'd been here once as a 10-year-old. And I worked in Christchurch for a year as a tutor / dog's body.
Okay.
So being paid just enough money to survive, accommodation built in free, and that year meant that I could travel around the country during all of the school holidays, get to know the place, and actually quite fell in love with it. By the time I'd been here 11 months, which is when I went back to the UK, I was like, this feels like home almost. I love this place. And I'd got from the top of the country to the bottom of the country and really seen the sights, done the usual touristy thing with the bungee jumps as well.
Yeah.
And that was in Queenstown, actually, the jumps. Yeah. And went back, did the university thing, started working, but just in the back of my head, I had this New Zealand itch that I had to keep scratching. And there was a job in a magazine called The Grocer, and The Grocer was, not very thick, Woman's Day type thick magazine that came out weekly or monthly, I can't remember. And in the back of this Grocer magazine, they had a job in New Zealand. They were looking for deputy store managers to move to New Zealand, to commit to at least 3 years to become store managers. They just didn't have enough succession planning in their ranks. And they'd done it with Australians. They'd come over, but they'd gone back to Australia. So they're what do we need to change? And they went to the UK.
The distance, so it's harder to move.
Make it more of a commitment.
Yeah.
So they got a bunch of us Poms over, and I think I was the second wave of this recruitment process.
Yep.
And worked for them for a number of years. Became a store manager after about a year and a half or so, and stayed in that grocery sector for a number of years. Worked for a couple of other organizations still in the same industry after getting out of supermarkets.
Yeah.
There was a takeover, and that changed things considerably. So all the English guys slowly drifted off. It wasn't the same as we'd sort of, what we were promised when we started. So it obviously different owners. And as I say earlier, I was getting to that point where I thought, this is fine, but this isn't necessarily what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I started doing the course. Did a course part-time over a number of months. Oh, this will be useful for my knowledge. I'm interested in health. I quite like going to the gym.
Yeah.
And finished the course thinking, this is more than just information. I reckon I could build a career from this. So did exactly that. And I worked for a woman who had a studio where it's a fairly small studio. So one of every type of equipment. It's not like a big monster gym.
Yep.
That really was good grounding for me. I mean, I understood business, but I didn't understand the exercise industry. So it was getting a feel for how that operates, how those sorts of businesses run. And then that closed in 2016. So I was sort of, at that point, had to make a decision how I was going to run my business. And it was a matter of investing more in my business, building a gym so that I had a facility.
Okay.
And had somewhere that clients could come and work with me.
Yeah.
And then that was around that time was when I started doing more learning, more training, and getting in onto the health coach pathway.
Right.
So I was doing both of those things at the same time. And and here we are today. What's that? Probably about 9 years after building the gym. So I've been in the industry about 17 all up.
Right.
Won an award. So, it's been a rewarding career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still have the facility?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got the space.
Still got a space. Still see movement clients.
Yeah.
And that blends in with the coaching. So there's a lot of coaching that goes on as well. So that keeps me, grounded in terms of the knowledge that I need that I can then transpose to the health coaching space, working with people in organizations. So I'll help them with things that don't require movement. But if there's something going on with their body, I can also help with that as well.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. And I guess that kind of gives, it's quite nice having, like, we've got so used to having remote spaces now, remote meetings, remote relationships with our clients. But it's always nice to have a base, right?
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's good, but it can be lonely as well, depending on what environment you're in. But for me, I work on my own, so I love the opportunity to get out of those four walls,
Right.
go and see those organizations, and feel the buzz of working in an office space.
Totally.
How that rolls, and you get a sense of what the culture's like and how they operate as an organization. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So when you were kind of going on this learning journey and you made that pivot to health, was there a catalyst that made you look there, or was it just a natural progression?
I think it was a natural progression. I think because of the work that I was doing I was part of a group that we had education on an ongoing basis. So I signed up to a program with an exercise physiologist who is actually a Kiwi in Australia.
Okay.
And the program was that every week we would sit down and have an education session. And this is pre-Zoom, but it was done on a platform that did the same thing as Zoom.
Yep.
We would monthly catch up and have a mastermind session. So that meant that it was more about personal development rather than business development. And then every year we would all get together in person, either in Australia or New Zealand as a group, and practice some of the things that we'd been working on across that year and sort of solidify the learning by being in person. And it just rolled. It kept rolling year after year after year. And obviously you start because you want to improve your knowledge and get better at what you do.
Yeah.
But you soon get to know these other individuals really, really well. Yeah. Become friends.
Totally.
And so that's why you stay.
Yeah.
You stay for the community. And I'm still part of that community in its slightly different form, but still part of it. So I just got on this learning journey, and it was just year after year, and it just kept rolling, and I didn't want to get off.
Right. And are they all basically similar business owners?
Very similar. Yeah, very similar. Everyone has their different strengths and then sort of areas where they've specialized. Like one of the girls has gone really into the functional health side of things. So much more understanding about, gut health and sort of liver, hormonal, immune system, all that sort of stuff. So the beauty of that is that, you've still got this connection. And if we have challenges with our clients, we can go, I've got this going on with so-and-so. What are you at? Is there anything you can think of that could be, well, have you tried this? No, I haven't tried that. Well, what about that? Yeah, okay. So I'll try that, and that. Great. Let's see how we go. And so that advice is virtually free from experts in their field.
Yeah.
So it's a really powerful community.
Yeah, that's cool. I think it's essential as well. Like for your situation, like you said, it's like almost a little bit lonely. And to have that kind of safety net really helps. Yeah. And then people talk to you about, because you're going to have similar issues. They're going to look different. But they're going to be all similar issues.
They are. Yeah. Right. Just different flavors.
Dressed slightly different. Yep. That the same fundamental kind of challenges.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think it's really interesting, right? Because, in your field of work, you can make a really great living and build a great business on your own. And I think that it seems like a lot of people stay in that solo space in your industry quite often, rather than building like a bigger team and dealing with that kind of challenge that comes with it. Is there a reason why? Is it because of a cultural pace of actually how you guys want to live as independent business owners? Or is there something around the business model and the kind of industry that suits itself better to that almost like mercenary approach?
Yeah. Good question. I think it's down to the individual, and I think it does start in that space. I think personally for me, I've been in that environment where I'd had teams, I'd run stores, I'd run areas of a city, I'd run a company that was national, and I'd always been responsible for people.
Right.
And that's probably one of the biggest challenges is managing people. And I suppose probably getting to a point where I made the change so that that wasn't the case was part of the refreshing side of being in business for myself, was that I didn't have that headache of people managing.
Right.
And obviously that's where the big bucks come, because when you're responsible for people and, you know, big budgets, yeah, that's where the salary follows. So, you know, there was a certain salary sacrifice to begin with, but I felt like there was a greater level of control,
Right.
in my day to day in terms of how things rolled.
That's awesome.
And that was really important at that stage. I think I was kind of over being in those environments with lots of other people and lots of moving parts.
Right.
And I suppose the experience that gave me meant that if those environments ever came up again in terms of work opportunities, I could handle them because I'd already been there, but it certainly wasn't my primary interest in terms of how my work looked.
Yeah.
And going back into organizations now and working with them is quite interesting, because having been in that space, I get the challenges that people have on a day-to-day basis when they're working for an organization.
And you're not in the forest.
No. Yeah.
Right. You get to,
Yeah.
you get to, done right, you get to kind of live in a state of flow, right? Because you get to be a little bit further removed. And that's how people should treat your kind of role, right? And the relationship with you is that you don't need to be in the forest. That's kind of part of the benefit, the edge that you have.
Yeah. True.
But it's also probably quite a fulfilling environment for yourself personally, if managed well, right? Because because there's a lot of satisfaction being in that state of mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of business owners don't get to live in that state of mind.
No. That's right. That's right. And so helping them get some clarity, helping them work on the business rather than in the business. There's that classic cliche. I think that's typical of small organizations. Certainly larger organizations mean that you've got the resources to be able to step back and make sure you are always working on the business rather than in the business. But you're right. It does help create that clarity. You know, you're walking out at the end of the day and it's not yours to lock up.
You get to put it.
Someone else is locking up. And so that does bring a certain amount of freedom and I suppose stress relief in a way.
Totally.
Yeah.
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 That's cool. Were you always entrepreneurial, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I still don't think I'm very entrepreneurial now.
Interesting.
No, I don't think I think it's something I really have to work at.
Okay.
I don't think it's something that comes naturally. My father was.
Right.
So I suppose I sort of have this, you need to be able to do what he did, and we're different animals. We're
Right.
totally different animals.
Okay. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I think he's probably, in his day, he was more of a old school, ruthless business owner.
Right.
Where I just don't see myself as that at all.
Yeah.
You know, I am here to serve and support people, and I suppose I've always been in that role. Certainly working for myself, I've always been in that role. I am here to help someone with their health, with their movement, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That's my primary focus, as opposed to trying to build an empire necessarily.
Okay, and that was his focus, and you watched and observed that growing up.
Correct.
And then you learned what you did and didn't want from that. And did you then see him struggle, and that's partly why you've ended up engineering your life to then help those ruthless business owners that are probably not actually that ruthless. They're probably quite vulnerable and lonely and going through the ringer, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably where that empathy piece comes for.
I think you're absolutely right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, so you grew up in the UK. He was in the UK.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he was born here.
Yeah, so he was only 2.5. So when my grandparents went back, after the war was over, the Cadbury's job was done. They went back. He was 2.5, so he was a baby.
Yep.
So he's not really a Kiwi.
Yeah,
he's only a Kiwi on paper. Whereas I feel like I've lived here longer now than I did in the UK. So I feel like I'm an honorary Kiwi at least.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went back to the UK in 2023, and we're like, this isn't home. Very familiar, but New Zealand's home for us. And I had a similar experience in that I tasted New Zealand when I was 15.
Oh yeah.
Went to Auckland Grammar for a year, really enjoyed it. Fell in love with New Zealand. Came back when I was 18.
Right.
Then ended up back in the UK for about 18 months, 2 years, but then came back the day after we got married. We actually moved to New Zealand.
Cool.
And then we've been here ever since.
Yeah.
And it was that sense of there was that itch to come back, right, continuously, and this kind of vibe, I would call it, that really resonated with me. And then we were back in the UK and it was like evident. It was like, okay, this is not home, right? This is like totally not home.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to going home, you know?
I like visiting, but I couldn't stay.
Yeah, totally. What entrepreneurial endeavors did your father go on?
So he ran a packaging organization.
Okay.
So really boring stuff.
Yeah.
Flexible packaging.
In the what part of the UK?
In the Midlands. Yeah. So Evesham. And so it was in the printing and packaging business. So to sort of give you an example of the sort of products, you imagine your big 20 or 30 nappy bag that you pick up at the supermarket that's got its own built-in handle.
Yeah.
You know, the baby on the front was printed by a machine that was in his factory.
Right.
Or your frozen peas in the frozen department, those sorts of products.
Okay. So basically his visuals on packaging.
Absolutely. And his customers were mostly supermarkets, those kinds of organizations that were, food producers or food retailers or.
Well, factories at that time were probably the highest leverage businesses that you could get. And they had probably the most complexity because they were dealing with physical machinery in factories.
Yeah.
But also had the highest leverage relative to the time because there wasn't the internet and the kind of distribution line that we have today.
Yeah.
Which provides a lot of power to entrepreneurs potentially that want to get immense amounts of leverage through the internet rather than maybe machinery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that would have been capital intensive, very stressful, lots of people, probably needed investment.
Yeah. All those things. Yeah. Yes. And massive warehouse, massive buildings that, you keep these machines in and, inks and bagging and trucks and, all the different components that go into manufacturing those things.
Well, the maintenance that some of this probably not appreciated enough is the maintenance required to keep the machines running.
Yeah. There was a guy permanently on staff who was just a Mr. Fix-It.
Yeah, totally.
Permanently.
Did you spend much time in the factory?
Oh yeah, weekends I was in the factory. And me and my brother, we used to use the phone. They had internal phone systems.
Right.
And I'd go into one office, he'd go into another. We'd ring each other up while my father opened the mail, and he did his Saturday morning routine at the office every Saturday.
The little ritual of doing all the stuff that needed to be done when no one else was there.
Exactly. No one else was there. And he would open the post and do a whole bunch of other stuff for a few hours each Saturday. And we'd either mess around on the phones because no one else was there, or we usually weren't on the shop floor. We weren't allowed to just rush around the machinery because of safety. But yes, that was part of our growing up.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Nice. And that, I guess, leading back into, your experience was, how was his health then?
Yeah, I think
Or relatively
challenged at times. I think his stress.
Yeah.
I do remember he was very good at getting himself back home on a work day where he'd traveled. His background is in sales, so he always had that sales mentality.
Right.
He isn't even as the owner. So he would be talking to customers or finding new customers. He'd be up the motorway, down the motorway to try and get home, to not have an overnight away.
Right.
But that took its toll because, you're talking hours cruising down one of the motorways in the UK. And I remember, he would come in some nights and then just sort of collapse in the chair sort of thing. It's like, nice to see you, but he's just a costume.
He's
little man.
Empty shell self.
Yeah. Not always, but certainly sometimes.
From time to time.
Yeah, and I remember also vague information. Never really saw the whole picture as a kid, but when the business needed some financial input, and they'd committed to a machine that was over £1 million back in the 80s,
and that's significant.
And the impact that had and the risk that was involved with that, and just quiet conversations in the corner with my mother where she was sort of reassuring him, and we were shooed into another room.
Yeah.
Thinking, what's going on? But you sort of knew what was going on, but you didn't. But it certainly took its toll, I'm sure. But he was fairly active. I mean, he liked squash. He was a good swimmer. So some of that stuff rubbed off for sure. The fact that he enjoyed doing those things.
Yeah.
And that's certainly some of the stuff that stuck with me.
Squash is a good sport.
Yeah.
And I think, and swimming would be great for that sort of getting out of your head.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Floating up and down. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So then as a part of that, I guess like work-life balance has been a big focus of yours.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I think subconsciously it's not something I've sort of necessarily thought too much about, but realized that it's important to me. Yeah.
So what are your hobbies that are exercise driven? Is it just gym, or are there active, like, are there team sports or individual
Yeah, I
sports?
used to do a bit of football until I got injured, and I thought, I don't want to keep doing this.
Right.
Yeah, it's a fairly bad mouth injury, and it was social though. It was summer soccer. I'm a rubbish, footballer, but it was the social. Friday night pitch up, not kick a ball around, have a beer afterwards, and then the weekend started. But I do a bit of gym and run and swim, and I've been recently taken up tennis, which I didn't play since I was 11 years old.
Right.
And a mate of mine joined the local club and said, "Hey, look, I've just joined. Have you got some time?" I was like, "I can carve out an hour somewhere."
Hi.
So we're knocking around or on the tennis court every so often. So that's different and fun. So, yeah. Enough activity.
Awesome. Yeah. So I guess looking forward then a little bit, what would success look like for you in 5 years with your business? Like, if you were to kind of horizon gaze 5 years from now, what would the ideal situation be?
I think the ideal thing for me is to build this credibility in the health space, the workplace wellbeing space, right? More so, I've got some decent clients, but I want to grow that. I want a waiting list, if you like, right, of clients that want my services, know that there's value to be had, and are prepared to wait 6 months or 3 months or whatever it may be, right, for the program to start. So that's the point at which I will then need to go, okay, do I need other resources? Do I need to contract people in? Do I need team members? Whatever that may be. So that's sort of what I see the next 5 years being, is sort of just building that awareness,
Right.
and building the client base. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you're basically, over the next 5 years, going to see how you can create a bit of a backlog for your programs. And it's almost like they're interventions then. They're not necessarily always on, or maybe they end up always on, but real high impact with a waiting list of some description, where your client base sees the value. That you also have a pipeline of these programs, and that's like going to basically give the business more of an edge and probably increase your ability to scale strategically with high income, good margins.
Yeah. That's the goal. A good summary. That's what it will hopefully look like. That's the plan anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because I kind of find this interesting, right? Because, well, at least for myself, like I think a lot of business owners don't see much, don't think about the value of their business as an asset. And I would say maybe more so in what you do, where what is the value of the asset, because you've got clear key man risk.
Yeah.
But perhaps, there should be a lot more thought around how do you unlock that what I would call equity value in the business, so that you have a great path towards more equity. You maximize that asset that you're building.
Yeah.
And you can't really necessarily do that on your own.
No.
Or that's fine, right? You're like, actually, no, it's okay. I don't need to necessarily build the asset or equity value, but it's a high margin business that gives me great cash flow. And then I'm going to leverage that cash flow to then build my asset base.
Yeah.
But it's something that I don't think's thought about too much in New Zealand. Like, we've been dealing with a bunch of clients at the moment where they're like, oh, well, I don't know if I can sell it, or I don't know if I can get the price I want when I sell it.
Right.
But I actually can earn a great income from dividends. So there's a lot of conversations we're having with clients around management buyouts.
Okay.
Because they're starting to think about retirement and succession.
Yeah.
And that's been quite good, because I think that means that the conversations are being had more around what is the value of this asset that I'm building, and it does have value. And also, how do I leverage that value that I'm spending my time building, so that the service doesn't stop, right? Because that's going to have impact on people, and that trickle-on effect, right? That you mentioned in the beginning. But then also, how do you then leverage? Because, you could have 5 of you that are really you, trained under you. It's almost that apprenticeship model.
Yeah.
And then that gives you huge amounts of leverage. You could almost like start your own version of the community that you've got all this expertise from. Because it's not a franchise, is it? That
No.
community.
Not at all.
But it's a franchise of knowledge.
Yeah.
Which is highly powerful.
Yeah.
And you've built that personal relationship with them where you get on the phone. A lot of people need that. A lot of business owners need that.
They do. Absolutely. That's why those mentorship programs work so well, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
And they get the support of other organization owners in that same boat.
Yeah. So how have you then designed your kind of family life then? And how are you, because given your work, you're very aware of movement, health, and also the cultural dynamics that come with it. So like, has there been quite a intentional approach about how you've designed that?
Yeah, I suppose there has. It's sort of happened subconsciously, I think. I don't think I've sort of gone, right, I haven't sort of stepped it out and gone, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
I think it's evolved into those things because I realized that I think it's driven by values, isn't it? For me, it is anyway. When you know what your values are, that drives behavior, that steers you towards the goals that you set.
Yeah.
And I suppose when I got clear on that myself, by dint of how the subconscious mind works, my brain just started shifting me towards the way things are. So in terms of family life, it's making sure that everybody is active and making sure that everybody's, certainly when the kids are at school, was, what sort of sport are you doing? How much of it are you doing? And not doing too much, but just doing the right a safe amount that means that they don't get injured and burnt out, because that can happen too. And then, when school starts to, when life changes, because the structure of school tells you everything you need to do from when you start to when you finish.
Yeah.
What habits have been collected along the way that can carry on in adult life or post-school life, university life, work life, that becomes part of you, and so that's might be sports teams, or it might be, planning to run your first marathon, or whatever it is that sort of just keeps you doing stuff, keeping healthy, keeping that physical aspect of health going.
Totally.
And then, a fairly ruthless is the wrong word, but fastidious approach to nutrition in terms of what we eat, when we eat it, how well organized we are so that we always have the right food at the right time. Those are the sorts of things that for me have become quite important, rather than just winging it.
Yes.
I think most people do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't require that much time. It's just about going, right, okay, that's important to me. What's my solution for that thing? I'm a systems kind of person.
Yeah.
You need systems in
There's
large organizations.
There's the factory upbringing.
Yeah, there's that. And I think my retail background as well, like from a retail point of view, when you've got lots of moving parts, you need a system for everything, right?
Yeah.
So everyone knows, and everyone needs to know what the system is. So everyone knows this is how things work around here. And I suppose that mentality has just stayed with me. It's like, okay, what's the system for recycling? What's the system for buying vegetables? What's the system for making sure there's enough protein in the house? All of those sorts of things. There's something going on for each of those. And mostly I drive them, but everybody knows what they are. And if I can't do it, then someone else will go and do it.
Okay.
So yeah, it's, which means then that ecosystem stays healthy. Everybody's generally doing all the right things. And, you could call it quite controlling, but I think for the right reasons.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and what does that look like? Because I would say that what I've noticed in, like, for example, MMA and jiu-jitsu over the last kind of 5 years is that the nutrition side of it has come such a long way.
Mm. Mm.
You know, you look at the physique and the output that the athletes had 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, completely different to today.
Mm. Mm.
The ability for them to cut weight. I mean, not that I think that cutting weight's good,
Mm. Mm.
but the ability to cut a lot of weight in a more efficient, safer way, utilizing actually, like, the nutrition and the diet side. And how do you switch on the different elements? And that has really become a huge evolution in MMA over the last 3 years, I would say, more so.
Right. Yeah.
Where the nutritionists are the guys that are actually doing the majority of the management of the weight cuts.
Mm. Mm.
But I think, it's something that is clearly what I've seen has been the biggest, I guess, mover towards the next evolution of health and fitness has been nutrition and supplements.
Yeah.
Creatine, I would say, has been something that lots of people have talked about over the last couple of years, especially, but also you've just noticed a more focused outlook on nutrition. And how do you manage that? Because, like, do you guys do a lot of food prep, or do you just have the right ingredients at home and make time to just put the meals out when they're needed?
Not as much food prep as you might think.
Yeah.
More about the ingredients at the right time. Having enough of the right things. Go, right, salad, vegetables, meat, fish, whatever it might be. And, you can put all of those together in half an hour easily.
Totally.
Easily.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think that nutrition space has evolved enormously from a sports point of view, but also the market out there for supplements is absolutely incredible.
Right.
And there are so many companies jumping on that bandwagon. And the supplement industry, isn't very regulated. So you can produce anything. You've got to be careful. You can't make any claims, but it's, clever packaging, clever messaging can certainly convey a message of what they want without making claims.
Yeah.
And
the actual first principle benefits are maybe
questionable,
potentially more,
Yep.
potentially even that kind of placebo.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we know that that's powerful, right?
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it's something like, is it 1 in 4? So like a 25% pickup rate, or is it the other way around, 75%? I can't remember, but it's powerful. And drug companies don't like the placebo effect, of course, because they're selling drugs. So I think you've got to do your homework when it comes to those sorts of products, because you can pay a fortune for a bunch of stuff which, is half of it working? Is a third of it working? We don't know. And
I think
unless we can look at the studies.
Yeah, I think supplement is like supplement is a supplement. Like, can you get it from the source better? High quality ingredients. How much can you get there? Do you need a turmeric pill, or can you get turmeric from fresh turmeric, or ginger, for example? Ginger is a great one. For anti-inflammatory.
You're right. And I think fish oil is a good example of one that speeds the process up, because you'd have to eat a lot of fish to get the right quantity, right?
Yeah.
So if you are going to take a fish oil, which is recommended to most people, it's about having high quality, not supermarket stuff. The potency is pretty low.
Yeah.
In those off the shelf ones. So you've got to go hunting for the good stuff.
Right.
Because if you're paying for it, you may as well get the best you can possibly get.
Yeah.
Because then you're getting better bang for buck. But you're right. I think some of the others, it's an add-on after the fact of not eating well enough that people justify having it, as opposed to, well, get all the nutrition right first and then see what you're missing, right? And one of the best way to do that is just get a complete blood panel, so you can actually see the evidence of what's missing, what's not missing.
How often do you do that? Not often.
I do it annually. For more than one reason. So yes, it's good to do, and it's part of the training that I did, and I know how to read the bloods, and I'm looking for an optimal number. But also I participate in AIA Vitality.
Right.
So I get points for doing all the good stuff, and I get points for doing the bloods as well. I'm going to do them anyway. I might as well get the AIA Vitality points, which gives me a discount off my insurance premium. So, yeah, it's a good thing to do, and I recommend all my clients do it. And those clients that do, I'll just have this rolling spreadsheet so that I can compare the last ones with the previous ones, and you then have a nice picture. Because bloods are useful, but if you've only got one set of bloods, you've got nothing to compare it.
Right.
So it's about what they're like compared to last year's and the year before and the year before and the year before. And then you've got some good data to go, yeah, we're going well, or actually these numbers are looking like they could be better, but everything else is okay. Let's focus in on these ones.
Yeah. What do you think what do you avoid in terms of nutrition the most?
Processed food, stuff out of a packet.
So like pasta.
Anything that's highly refined. So pasta can be fairly unrefined. It can be flour, egg, water. But I don't mind a bit of pasta. I used to eat a lot more when I was younger. But
Kids love it.
yeah, I mean, it's a good belly filler, right? But there's not a lot of nutrition.
No.
You're not getting a lot of benefit. So I think if you need to top up your calories, the way I look at it is you look at the protein first, get the right portion of protein, get the right portion of vegetables and leafy greens and all of those other good complex carbs. And then if you still need fuel,
Right.
bring in the rice or the kumara or whatever your favorite type of starchy carb may be. And that's, that depends on your day. If you're going to sit all day, you probably don't need that extra. But if you are going to be active and you've got 3 walking meetings in the city in that day,
right,
it's going to be a more active day. So you top up a little bit. So you just up and down depending on what your needs are. But yeah, to answer your question, that processed foods is the one, right?
Yeah.
Minimize the takeaway food. Minimize the easily consumed food that you can buy at the supermarket. And generally speaking, that's the stuff in the center of the store, right? The stuff that's got a long life that can stay there for a long period of time has got things in it that keep it that way.
Yeah.
So use them sparingly, use them with a wise hat on that says, as a portion of everything I eat, that's only a small percentage.
Right.
But try and take as much food from the outside of the supermarket as you possibly can, because that's the stuff that perishes, which means it's fresh, which means it's got life in it, which means there's value for my body. And that's why they're on the outside of the store, because they get regular deliveries. The stuff in the middle, you might have regular deliveries, but you don't have to move it once you've got it in place, right? Whereas broccoli is technically no good after 2 days.
I love broccoli.
It's all right, yeah. It's pretty good.
Big fan of broccoli.
It's
Always been a big fan.
It's a staple, really, isn't it? It's a never ending. You just, when it's there, you grab it.
I do find it hard with the kids. I get very frustrated because I'm pretty aware of the nutritional side.
Yeah.
And I think from the UK as well, the UK is just a terrible track record of consuming processed crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get triggered by bad, if we provide a bad lunch, I actually get really annoyed.
Right.
I get upset.
Yeah. Okay.
So I like doing the lunches because I'm a bit more into it.
Yeah.
My wife likes, she likes crisps, right? And
Yeah. Look, I like crisps.
Chips.
Try not to. Yeah.
So I like, but I also get frustrated because I know like almost the better I provide, the less they'll eat. Like, I struggle to get them to eat good food. And then I get frustrated. I'm like, why do you always want this rubbish? And like, why don't you want the nice stuff that's good for you?
It's a journey. It's a non-stop journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, it's being consistent, from a parenting point of view. You want to be a role model for your kids so that once they get to the point where they have the power to decide, they're already in a habit that goes, I do want that. I know that's not so good for me, but I'll mostly have that. My daughter came home with a Big Mac and a whole bunch of other rubbish the other day. I was like, what's that? It's a Big Mac? I do like a Big Mac.
I love it.
But she knows that she can't do that every day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, she's not going to be able to play netball. She's not going to bounce out of bed every morning because it's going to affect more than just, weight and body composition. It's energy and all sorts of stuff. So it's 80-20, it's the 80-20 rule, right?
Yes.
And that works. And if you need to dial it up to 90-10 for a while and then back to 70-30,
that's fine.
That's all good.
Yeah. I totally agree. That's cool. I just thought that it'd be kind of nice to get some, that low hanging fruit. I think is like, because often we kind of, Helena, who's the other host on here, she talks about meeting people with where they're at,
Yeah, very.
and she does that as a health coach, and she's kind of, I would say she's unfortunately more in the space of bottom of the ambulance and the bottom of the hill.
Okay.
That's her space.
Yeah.
That probably that lower decile kind of community focused work.
Yep.
And then you're kind of meeting people with an expectation that can let them win. Because, like those habits that are really strong, like you say, they're built over many years. So how do you get good wins without basically being tempted to go full hog and then backsliding?
Yeah, and it's a tricky one. And I think one of the things I always reference is James Clear's Atomic Habits, because it's so well known to most people. And it's looking for those 1%ers, right? That, like you say, the low-hanging fruit. And to go from wherever someone is to where you think is where they should be is the wrong approach. It's, as you say, meeting them where they're at. What does your routine look like now? And what's one thing that you could do to improve that?
Yeah, nice.
It's not a wholesale change. It's, well, actually, I don't drink much water. So how much water do you drink? Well, a couple of glasses. So could you go for 3? Could you get that 3rd glass in? Yeah, I could probably do that. And then they start sort of solutionizing. When would I do that? How would I do that? And they know the answer to that. And that is a step in the right direction. That's a win. And, those little wins add up, and you just get more and more little wins. And slow, if you get 8, 10 of those little 1%ers, then that's 10%, right?
Yeah.
Totally. And it doesn't feel like a big onerous task. And that's one of the approaches I take with organizations. I say, with the individuals, what's something you can change that doesn't take any more time to do? In other words, you're already doing something similar. All we need to do is tweak it a little bit so that it doesn't take more time, but actually you get a better outcome. And when people start doing that and thinking like that, they can make lots of little changes.
Right.
And in a month's time or 2 months' time or 3 months' time, you step back and go, look what's changed. It's quite significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Powerful.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the pod. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so it's been great.
It's been fun. So thank you.
No problem.